they are contented, I am all for it. I have been hungry enough, and I appreciate every bit of it. But I still try to cook with little fat as possible and little sugar as possible. Anyhow, we have time to talk, and we have to. There's plenty water in the kettle, and we can make another cup of tea.
You have done very well, Mrs. Frank.
If you would be hungry, I would gladly make you a sandwich, but that is as good as
No,
the
thank you.
sandwich.
No, it's just lovely, thank you.
Okay, now
Well, so you have your
let's go
shearing
again.
team on the thing, on the farm.
But
Yeah, we're talking about the shearing
Yes.
team. That would that include a classer, or that someone separate? A classer.
the class are actually in a contract team.
Can I make another cup, Mark?
No.
The classer was the boss. If there was anything wrong if you were unhappy with the way they were shearing the sheep, because some shearers could be a bit rough, they could cut the sheep or mishandle it. Any problems, you didn't go to that shearer, you went to the classer. He mightn't have owned the shearing team, but he was the man in charge, and he's the man you'd say, look, I'm not happy with that, speak to him. So yeah, classer was...
And sometimes they had women classes, didn't they?
Yes,
Ones
sometimes
didn't have
women
one.
classes and women rouseabouts. Women rouseabouts, dare I say it, they were better than the guys, because women, they're more nimble to start with, and they're quite particular how they skirt a fleece, and they would make, I think they made better rouseabouts than the guys, because guys sort of tend to get carried away with talking to one another and sitting down. The women were really good.
Mm-hmm.
But,
What about the pressing?
and the presser's a hard job.
It's a hard one.
That's something else which changed. Originally, when your dad first went out, they used to hang 4 wires, one for each corner of the wool pack from the shed roof, and you put the wool in, and you had to trample it by hand and until you got it full, then you pulled over the
Those
tops.
things.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Then they got wool presses
Oh yeah.
that came out, and of course that was a great way you could press them, a mechanical press. It was still manual.
That was hard work.
Then your bales come out all nice uniform shape, because the other ones they weren't. You had this problem with putting them off trucks for transport. Then they got electric wool presses. In the bigger sheds, in the large pastoral sheds, they had what they call twin box presses, and I'm not quite sure how they work. There were 2 halves. You filled that half and that half in one. This half came over that one and fitted inside it, and you squash 2 together. They had those because they were just nothing but wool growers. But in the wheat belt, then they got electric wool presses, and they got pneumatic, hydraulic wool presses, and with the digital readout, so you've got them all the same weight, because you've got to have a certain weight to a bale of wool, otherwise it's lightweight and it went down to your wool store. At your cost, they would take some out of another bale that was heavy enough to withstand some wool being taken out and bring this one up, because all had to weigh, they had to be a minimum of 120 pounds, I think.
So let's take this back to the women's
Yeah,
side.
the women. So what I'm going to say with farmer's wife, we'll just finish on sheep first with the farmer's wife and what Jan and I did, and this is just, could be unique to us, I don't think it was, but we talked about shearing the sheep in the autumn. The blowfly problem in Western Australia is huge. It's an enormous problem with sheep. Getting a living sheep gets blowflies, they lay their eggs, and then they've got these maggots on them and kill the sheep. So you could crutch your sheep, the breech end, just take all the wool off them and keep them clean so that nothing got fouled up, the back end of the animal. But then if you shore in March, April, they didn't have so much wool on them when the peak blowfly season came, which was August, September. Then they came out with a chemical, or several chemicals, but right at the end a safe chemical called Betrazine, and we had an electronically operated sheep jetting race, and had terrific pressure with a pressure pump and a row of jets from the bottom and the top, and they hit the back of the sheep. As they ran through this race as fast as they could, this thing flicked itself off and on with pressurised stuff. this chemical, all it did was starve any eggs that were laid on the wool. So you got rid of your blowfly problem. So we could handle our sheep then much less often. You did it once and you let them go, and that helped do away with some of the farm labour you needed, because you had other jobs to do and you had sheep getting blowflies and you just had to look at them every day, which was a few thousand sheep, took a lot of time. So
You had winter blue flies too?
did we have,
In winter blue flies.
oh, the blowflies?
In winter.
Oh, not until August at the earliest. September and October were the worst months. The blowflies, an odd one around, but they suddenly exploded in the population, didn't they? Suddenly there were blowflies everywhere.
So
Absolutely
it's
shocking.
warm
But
For
weather.
3 months a year.
yes, for that bad 3 months, we could say August, September, October into a little bit of November. Really bad. Seemed to have
Spring.
something to do with,
Springtime, that's right.
Yeah,
When the
yeah.
weather's warm.
and with the capeweed, the dandelion flowers, seemed to all bring them together, you know. And
What about mosquitoes? Did you have a lot of mosquitoes too?
no, we didn't have a mosquito problem at all. No,
Too dry.
no. Too dry for a good period of the year. We had, it was like a quarantine period. Once the hot weather comes in December, January, February, March, very hot. Most years very dry, no mosquitoes. Most of the pesty type things
You did get,
perished.
did get midges.
Yeah,
Midges
Oh,
in
midges.
the warm September,
yeah,
which weren't very nice.
yeah. But the work was hard. We worked long hours, damn work.
So I had to chase the sheep through that race,
Yes.
and sometimes the sheep would get stuck and I'd get a dose of Betricin, so I never had to worry about blowflies.
Because as soon as it had one of these electronic eyes, like going into a shop, you know, the buzzer goes off
Yeah.
each side of this race, and as soon as you broke that contact, and you could break it by reaching forward to pull the sheep through, and these jets were looking at you then, so you were drenched. The minute they hit you, you were drenched. But it was a safe drench, insecticide. It was non-poisonous.
That's really bad. That must be what, in the late 70s or 80s or something.
Yep. And it's, what was I
We
gonna
also
say?
had to draft sheep. I used to,
Yes, Jan had a draft sheep. The sheepdogs reckon if Jan was there, well, they'd knock off.
yeah, they jolly things would go
I
and sit
had
in the
good
shade of the
sheepdogs.
tree. I had to do the barking.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, I mean, drafting's like getting into the pens or separate
Dividing
them?
them off the lambs from the ewes.
Oh, yeah,
and
okay.
what you
where
do is
there's
you have a long race. A race, you know, which is only one sheep wide, all
Yeah.
right? It comes in and it's one sheep wide for perhaps 10 metres. And at the end of that race, you could have either a three-way or a two-way gate. So your race is that wide, they're coming this way, and this gate goes from side to side. When it's that way, the sheep goes, when it's that way, it's got to go that way. And I would stand there and work it for everyone that was coming down. They come down fairly quickly, but as long as they're coming at a constant rate, you can get quite good at it.
Well, there'd be one time of the year, and then you'd go and you'd crutch them, and you'd sort of what do you call it? Like the males, you'd put the lucky bands around.
Yes, well, it's marking time. And then also there was mules in which people don't like, the mulesing system. All they're doing is creating scar tissue around the backside of the sheep, so that there's no wool grows and no dung sticks to the wool. And that's all it's doing. And you know, it's not a nice thing, but it's far, far better than seeing a living animal lying there kicking and it's being eaten alive by blowflies and maggots. I mean, that is awful. It's really terrible, you know, and it's terrible when you like your animals. There's no doubt there's some think, oh, it's not that bad, but we like animals.
Another
And-
thing that I ended up doing was at harvest time was I had to go and clean the sheep troughs, make sure the windmills were working
Like out in the paddock.
out in the paddocks.
Yep, make
Yeah,
sure
out in
every
the paddocks
windmill's-
early in the morning
yeah.
before it gets hot.
let me know if there was a windmill, you know, if the tank wasn't full, you know, you might be talking a 10,000 litre tank. If it wasn't full and there'd been a good wind, then there was something wrong with the mill. The underground pump was stopped, so you'd have to repair that. Jan would do all that checking because I would be busy harvesting. And Jan would check all the troughs, clean them. Sometimes a trough would be clean as anything, but unbeknown to you, a fox might have had a little lie down it overnight. Sheep wouldn't drink it, so they'll all stand around, look at it and just go thirsty. So you clean your troughs every day. That was, Jan had all those jobs to do.
What about bringing up kids?
Well, yeah, I did that too.
Yeah, harder than in the city? Well, the first in the kindergarten thing you had to organise.
It was sort of mainly delivering them to school on time, or, you know, the school bus on time. Once the youngest one started school, though, I went back teaching part-time. So that sort of went in with it too, but I didn't do that until Cameron started. By that time, Greg was in high school, so I'd take the children, when they had to go back to high school, I'd take them back to school.
And did you grow up in the country area?
I grew up in Kalgoorlie.
Kalgoorlie. So your parents were sort of a few hundred miles away?
Well, yes,
Yes.
they were hundreds of miles away.
I know, I mean, like, because we live far away from our parents.
That's right.
And well, especially for my wife, I think, I don't know, it's maybe she misses her family a lot more than.
Yes.
So that's maybe a similar experience for you.
Yep. But
You actually fairly, once, I suppose when we first married, it would have been, I found it very, very quiet. I liked the quietness, but I found it hurt my ears actually. It was so quiet being in the country. But then you become involved in so many things, because as well as sort of the working on the farm, and you generally grow some vegetables and things like that. You're involved in the different sports. I had golf and tennis and, we've said before, badminton to start with, and bowls. And you go travel with those things as well, and the CWA.
and
And
Jan's,
you get with catering when you're doing those sorts of things too. A CWA involves catering for various things.
she's a very artistic person. She used to go off to art classes and, well, not art classes, but art groups, you know, for painting and China painting, and you know, Jan is very good at that sort of thing. And it's a great. Seeding time was the hardest time. We would work from midnight to midday, 12-hour shifts, right? There was 4 of us. So Jan will start at some stage or other during the day, and that Jan would make a breakfast for somebody at 12 o'clock, midday. She would give them their tea, their lunch to take out to have at 6 o'clock at night, halfway through their shift. So they would head out, and then I would come back because I had just been working for 12 hours, and I'd have my tea and go to bed. But I would be getting up at midnight, and I would have my breakfast, and Jan would have my lunch ready for 6 o'clock in the morning, so she didn't get much sleep.
So I would have taken a meal out to the paddock for the men out in the paddock.
Yes, and we had 2 ways, and because I'd be trying to get some sleep, because I would do my 12 hours, and then I'd do the other farm work, things that need to be doing, bookwork, whatever else. Jan would say, well, you go to sleep, and if the 2-way calls up, the men are wanting to shift a paddock, and they may have to go, say, 6 or 7 or 8 kilometres. Now they've got a machine each, which they want to keep moving as fast as they can, seeding. They've got a truck, they've got a fuel tanker, they've got a breakdown vehicle, and they've got the vehicle that they came to work in. So they either could take one tractor with its seeding machinery there and a vehicle follow it, and go back and get another one and spend 3 hours shifting, or they could call Jan up and say, Jan, we're ready to shift. So Jan would go out in a Toyota Land Cruiser, and she would take both the guys back, and it was done in half the time. And then she'd go back to sleep for a while. So, you know, they do work hard, there's no doubt about it. You know, that was par for the course for us to do it the way we did. And then with harvest time, Mark, the hardest thing that they did, they put lights on headers, lights and air conditioners.
Yeah.
And suddenly you could still be harvesting at midnight. go around the clock if you had enough matchsticks for your eyes.
Yeah.
And storage for your grain.
Yeah, and storage for your grain. But whereas when I first started harvesting as a young guy, you started in the morning, and sometimes with the old harvester, it mightn't be dry until 10
Shall
o'clock
I bring in a lamp? There at the back.
to start harvesting, and you might knock off by 5:30, 6 o'clock. It was a nice dry evening, you'd go till sundown. You couldn't work after dark.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly there was lights on these machines, and you just kept going and going and going. So that's what created a hard life really for short periods, because the machines are big. They take about a quarter of the time to do the harvest now that they used to. But you work.
And then they got a two-way system, which seems really good, you know. Except they'd call you up and say, hey, we need this new part. Will you go down to so-and-so and take this part, or take this wheat sample up to Morawa, or
Yes.
down, one time I had to go down to Perth, didn't it?
Yes.
To Bali before they did it. So
300
that was another little
330 k's each way.
Yeah.
So, but because you must get it done. The job's got to be finished as quickly
Very
as you can.
intense.
You know, you'll lose your grain, or you'll lose the optimum time to plant your crop. You know, it's desperate that you do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, for all that, it's a good life that's gone. It's sad, it has. We and your dad, during the time that he was going up through the wheat belt, saw it at its very best. It won't ever come back to it again.
And when your children, none of the three, you had 3 sons,
Yes.
none of them wanted to stay on the farm?
They loved the farm, and they said it was the greatest way to grow up, to live on a farm. The eldest one
Never wanted to be a farmer.
didn't really want to be a farmer, but he wanted to be a pilot. He ended up being a pilot. And the second one, he liked the farm, but he was going to be a
Geologist.
geophysicist or something anyway. He's a database manager.
What?
Database.
Yeah, and the youngest one's a lawyer. So, you know, they're not worried to look at this year when it hasn't rained, and you know, you the best will in the world, you worry when it doesn't rain.
Yeah.
You do worry. You can't not worry.
Yeah.
So you know, they would still love to have the land, but they appreciate that you can't have it if you're not going to work it. And although they love the farm life, they reckon it was the best place you could ever possibly grow up in. You know, they tell me about jumping off haystacks that I didn't know they did when they were little.
Yeah.
Good. Oh yeah, it was good fun, Dad. You know, but and I know lots of our friends have got sons, and there's none of them left now. You know, and it'll come out when you talk with Ian Reid, if you get to meet him. Now, Ian, his son is on the land. His son has 3 sons. Ian has 3 grandsons. Just recently he said to me, Malcolm, I don't think any of them are going to be farming.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
One of the boys wanted to be, but the lass he married or became
Whatever,
engaged
yeah.
or whatever, she did not like it up in the country.
No. I
And
mean, the lifestyle and city lifestyle is let's say, to use a word which is maybe not the most appropriate, but so cushy. You know, the lifestyle that Australia has.
Yes.
I don't know how many, if people could, it's probably always been that way. City people would find it hard to adapt to the country.
Yeah, but not just that, Mark. I mean, just take a young woman who, you know, she goes up to the country, she has a baby. Now, down here she could have 10 girls she could see who are in a similar situation. They've got a newborn last baby and they can talk about. Up there, anybody. You know, she's got no one she can swap stories with. There's nobody she can find out something, because it's just too far, you know, in between.
That's the kind of isolation you live
It's
in.
the isolation, that's the word, the isolation. We went through through a lot of America years ago, and I read a National Geographic, and this guy quoted as saying, when the school closed, the town died. Bunteen School is still there, you know, but
and it's a very well equipped school too. It has
brilliant school.
everything that any school in Perth would have in it. There's nothing missing from it. But
Computers.
the numbers are getting so low, you wonder really the viability of it.
Well, what's interesting is you mentioned the word isolation actually now, but like a few minutes ago you were describing what sounded like such an active social life.
Yes.
Once, not now.
Because that's so long.
Sort of sounds like
Okay, because when I was talking to you when I was so active, that was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
45 years ago. Now, we've got this problem of distances to travel.
Yeah.
Like with the football.
Yeah.
The pictures are gone because not enough people came. The dances are finished because people wanted to go to cabarets and end up just the pubs, and there's nobody goes to dances anymore.
But it was also that get big or get out.
Yeah.
In the country, what, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
30 years ago,
30
it was
years ago.
you have to be viable, you have to get bigger or get out of it, and that's what happened. So the farms are getting larger, and
With
of course
people.
the people are fewer.
Yeah, there's
And the
nobody there to
machine's
support
getting
the
bigger,
shops.
so they don't need to employ a whole lot more people.
See, I'm not-
Maybe the farmer bought up your farm?
Pardon?
A farmer bought up your farm?
Yes, the farmer that bought my farm, yes, I knew him. He farmed not that far away, really, comparatively speaking, and we knew them. Yeah, they bought it, they're quite happy with it. But there's a million little things, Mark, that go into making what's happened to the country happen. And amongst those things, and I mightn't be 100% right, but we will just say, I said to you, Bunting and lots of other places had machinery dealers.
Yeah.
Now, a machinery dealer could say, yes, you want to buy a new harvester, righto Mark, yes, look, here's the deal, we'll trade that one in, I can sell that to this person over here, I know they were looking for buying one, and sorry, all that's me. Anyway, and he would ring up, we'll say it was Massey Ferguson, he would ring up Massey Ferguson, Vaseline and say, right now listen, well, a header on the, a harvester on the rail, I'll sell one to Mark, get it done. Now, I believe, you want to buy a header, harvester, you go to an agent and you say, I want to buy it. I said, okay, you want one for next year, we'll place the order now, you give us a deposit now, and we'll ring the factory, and the factory will make it.
No, thank you.
We won't hold one, so
No.
the person's not needed,
Yeah.
it's gone. So his salesman's gone, and his mechanic is gone, his repairman is gone. Just a tiny little bit, thanks, Mrs. Franks, for you. Thank you, that's great. So these are all the little bits that go into the pot to make the whole thing drain away. You know.
Alright, so and get to the question which I've been thinking of, sort of keeping on hold since the beginning of the conversation. Is, well, you said that like Dad was a part of the community.
Yep.
And well, I'd like to sort of like you to expand on that. And to be honest, it surprised me when you said it, because on one hand, it's my basic thesis that I'm trying to verify or the opposite, or or find out that it's not true. But I'm really expecting it not to be true. Not so much Dad. I'm talking about the Jewish wool buyers in general. And like for you, I'll explain what I mean. It's basically these guys spent, well, most of them actually were in the same region like Dad for 20, 30, 40 years, and they would spend something like half of those times, maybe gross or maybe brutal, but a good whack of those time, half the week in the country, in the same town, in the same region, for decades on time. And what's the impact on the rural community? How did the rural community see them? And that's sort of what interests me from the start.
Okay, well, yes, you see, because, and I have said this, and you'll find it there, that your dad and Sam Wendy were the two that, and there've been others, but they're two that I know of, were a little different to some of the other guys who really did see it just as, okay, I'm going to Woburn, I'll see you in 3 days' time, I'm going there to buy wool, and that was it, and that's all I wanted to do. But, your dad just sort of sat back and said, right, well, I bought you wool. He would, he spoke with me, we sat over lunch in the shearers' quarters and talked for an hour and a half. I mean, he sold the wool clip to him, and he bought a wool clip, and it wasn't just shake hand and gone, Your dad was, he was a businessman. Don't worry about that. I mean, the deal was the deal, and you know, he was going to make his money, and he had to make his money. I respect that.
Yeah.
He respected you had to make some money, but he was also, underneath all that, he was still a human. You know, he said, okay, you've got to start in the bowling club and something. Oh, we're really scratching, we're getting everything we can. Well, you know, can you folks will start the membership up too, because you needed something like 140 names to get a licence. We'll say that's what it was. I don't know what the figures were, but yep, says Ken, no worries, because he knew the local postmaster too. He was another avenue that told him who was doing what, because they always knew who was shearing and they knew everything. The townspeople know a lot. So, you know, your dad, he benefited from having this rapport with the community, really. He did. I mean, he was so
And they
blessed.
were a necessary part of the community, really, because they came in and here's this wool you've grown, and here's someone wanting to buy it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they weren't there,
You'd send it to them for.
yeah,
Well,
you'd have to
yes.
go further or
Your oddments was a waste of time setting the wool floor. Your oddments would be bagged up and you know, it's all right selling a bale of wool. When it comes to, well, they used to bulk class is what they called it. Small lots were bulk class. That mean, and if it was 6 cents a pound or a kilo, we'll say 6 cents a kilo to get your wool onto the floor in big lots, and it came to a bale of bulk class. You know, it was 20 cents a kilo to get it bulked up with someone else who had similar wool until they got enough of these similar wools to make a line. And it cost you, you know, so it was much better. Dad comes along. I mean, he possibly did that, but then he was in a position to get those 20 different lots that looked the same and sell it. I mean, Dad did sell wool. You know, he sell
But
wool.
he sold it cheap for the store, and they had classes.
Yes, yes, they had classes.
They had classes. He could, exceptionally, Frank could have, because he had a born feeling. He was better than a computer having grading the wool.
Yes.
He was exceptional. He was exceptionally good in guessing or establishing the quality of the wool.
Yes.
So he could have done that, but he didn't have the time and not that much wool. And room. You needed room here to do it.
Yes, that's right. And the
He
wool
couldn't
stores
bring it here.
Yeah.
The wool store had people who they employed
Yes.
to do that, and
Yes.
so he bought it cheap. He sold it cheap.
Yes. It was easier for him to do that. I mean, we could get our whole clip reclassed if we wanted to. Just send it down to the wool store and say reclass it, and they'd pull every bit out and class it all. Oh,
Yes,
no.
but Frank delivered himself the wool. You didn't need a carrier for it. That's where you saved a lot of money, because time-wise you couldn't do everything. Nobody can do everything.
No, that's one of the advantages of the wool buying firms, was they covered the transportation costs. That's that's one of the well-known factors.
Yes.
I mean,
Advantages.
that is because they were very small, and it paid for them to do it, and it paid for the store that they were doing it, because they still got it cheaper than at the railway or the...
Yes, there was still a dollar made on it. You see, your dad, I know your dad at one stage had in Woburn, at the railway station head, the rail head, there were goods sheds. And I know your dad had one there that he might buy 10 bags from me and 5 from you and 8 from you, bags, odd bits, onto the back of the Toyota. He'd get down to Woburn that night, and before anything else, he'd pull in, unlock this thing, and chuck all these things.
Very good remember something like that, yeah.
That's right. He had that. So, you know, he had a lot of reasons to be part of where he was.
He was from nature on a friendly person, and he wanted to belong to the community.
Yes. Yes.
He wanted to belong to the community. It's hard to belong to a community if you are a newcomer.
Yes.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, but he wanted to belong to it.
Yeah. Very hard. Look, I tell you, anywhere is hard to belong to start with.
Sorry?
Anywhere that you go, to join in to start with, it's hard. There's a barrier, whether it's perceived or real or what, I don't know, but there is. Anybody new comes into a little community in particular, what are they? You know, who are they? What they really like, you know. So
It might be in some ways a little bit easier in the country because country people are less snobby than the city folk. Maybe less picky.
Depends actually which part of the country.
Uh-huh.
There are
Yeah.
some parts of the country in the southwest that if your family hasn't been there for 3 generations, forget about it.
Yeah.
You know, you will never be accepted.
the Northern Wheat Belt had a reputation as being a friendly area to work in. I know. Just you heard that from different people that moved with their businesses from one spot to another. Yeah, they did, but it was really.
Well, I don't know, sort of. Is it say like Sam, Wendy, and Dad, and there are others also that certainly clicked. I think clicked and
Yes.
developed fairly close or special relationships with certain farmers. Now
Yes.
that existed, and they're not the only ones. There's
Yep.
Shiner and there's other
Yep.
people from down south as well, and I don't know the other guys that like Mr. Weinstock was here before, but is maybe that's what they had, and they weren't so much part of the community. Well, what do you think about that sort of proposition?
You are you saying that those that didn't fit in didn't really want to? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying even someone like my dad, who
Yes.
and it's quite clear that that with certain families and maybe with quite a number.
Oh,
of
yes, there
we
would-
had close,
oh.
good relationships,
My
but he
word.
he might not have so much have been part of the community as having
All
good
right.
relationships with
I see,
certain
yeah.
people.
You're okay. That's
More
fine.
rapport with some people.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. Some people would say yes, they'd have a better rapport with somebody else.
Sure.
So was it more that they had rapport with certain families rather than being a
The
part
whole
of the
community, well, that's what I was just going to say, but even though there was, that's partly right, I still think your dad and Sam Wendy, because they're two of that, I know that Mr. Shiner, and he was, that's going back to the
40s and
40s when he was there.
The
I
50s
just
was
know
not
that
alive.
I just know the way people spoke that he wasn't accepted quite the same. That's all you can say, you know. And you know, a couple of others that were around, they just weren't accepted quite the same. And people have. I still think, having said all of say that your dad would have had a greater rapport with others and a lesser with some. But by and large, he was still, despite whatever he had with some and not with others, he was still more part of the community than a lot of them.
Okay.
You know, and I know that maybe because he was there for a long time, I still think it would be mainly because he was an honest man to do his dealing with, because, you know, farmers, you know, they're still pretty shrewd.
Sure.
You know, you don't do the right deal with them in their eyes, and you know, they make sure that they don't invite you in for a cup of tea. You know, we've had travellers, not bull we had a traveller at one stage who was doing business with us, and it got that way that it seemed a bit funny that he was arriving right on lunchtime, and I one day. Just so our house was about 1.5 miles off the main road, and it was just a nice big patch of pristine timber near it, and I came round the corner and I could see his vehicle sitting up the top of the road. He's sitting there waiting till lunchtime to come down. We'll change this. So, yeah, I remember going past, oh, look, you know, were you waiting to see me? Yes, I was. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going out, there's no one home, that was it. You know? So they have their ways about it. You know, you don't have to be nasty to people. You can still get the message across them.
You don't like. These things happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's testing again on the community thing from another angle. This friend of mine, so he lived in Wager.
Yep.
And his father also passed away, and his mother, he said his mother, she was also actually a teacher down in Wager. And I don't know how many years, they grew the, raised the whole family.
I
And everything.
haven't tasted these. Are very tasty.
Just thanks you.
Very,
And
very
anyway,
You are really not helping me. I'm sitting here all day. I'm a
He
farmer.
said,
who's
like his
doing
mum was really
Yeah.
active all the time that they were down there. She'd be active in all sorts of clubs
It's
and
very simple.
associations and everything. And the dad was he was in with the family running the pub, the hotel. And she said as soon as Dad died, she was up and she was gone to Perth, and she never looked back. So it's a sort of maybe that's a particularly maybe it's an individual thing. Oh, maybe I don't know. Do you guys identify with that sort of feeling that you're involved in a whole lot of things that when you had to leave, the sense of community could be broken that easily?
I think mainly because the country is a very lonely place for a single person. For whatever reason you become single, the country is a very lonely place. And I could see that happening.
You can move, but I think you can go back and you're accepted just the same way as if you hadn't left. Like we'll go back, people say, oh, come back, come for a visit, we'd like to see you. And you go back and everyone, different ones will come in and drop in and see you. So your relationship with the people that you had up there can still be very close. But we live 15 miles, not kilometres, from town. So if I want to post a letter, it's 15 kilometres. And I got very tired of travelling. So to get down to the city or somewhere like that where I can actually walk to the shop feels really great, and I really like it. Don't like the closeness, like space. We were actually at Serpentine for a while and that was really lovely. Still had to drive to go to the shop, but there were people around, so you had the feelings of people but still the space, whereas having moved where we are, everything's well compact. But you are still accepted back. If you go back up to where you come from, you're still readily accepted. We still have contact with the people. So the tie's not completely broken, but it's much easier living down here. I think
Conveniences, yeah.
We got involved, Jan and I think we were just sort of normal, your average sort of country people. We got really quite involved in community activities. I mean, I was on the council for 15 years, for Injury Shire, which was, and from there that led to other things, and you sort of, to run your farm, I'll do my office work at 5 o'clock in the morning, make sure that was done, because you had to run your farm. Your farm had, your business had to run before you did any community stuff. But I mean, we had a vehicle each. In the end, we had 2 cars, because Jan would be going one way and I'd be going the other way. We liked doing things together, don't get me wrong, but there was times when it was imperative that Jan would have to go to Perth to see the kids who were in high school. If I was, I did a contract hay baling, if I had to do that, then you couldn't stop. You couldn't cut hay while the sun shines, I say. Nothing truer. Jan's got to go to Perth, so so you are busy all the time. And to, as Jan says, to come down to the city where it's relaxing, you can join a club without having to be secretary or treasurer or captain or vice captain, or you can sort of sit back for a while anyway and enjoy just playing a sport or involved in activity without holding some sort of reins. Whereas in the country, you've got to hold the reins sometime, and more often than not, a lot of the time. So, yeah, I think, so I can see this person that you're talking about. Yes, once the pair was no longer a pair, they would go. As Jan said, you're welcome to go back. The country people, don't forget to. You also, the sad thing about it is, maybe it's not a sad thing, but if somebody, if there's a fatal accident in the country and it involves a person in a small town, the whole town feels it. The whole community, not just the town, the community feels it. That's a sad thing that so many people are affected, but it's a good thing in that that person who has been the affected one quite often has a lot of other shoulders to lean on.
Yeah. Maybe even
lonely, but
financial
lonely
problems also.
Yeah.
I just saw a program the other night. So like when times get tough, there's supposedly in a country town or I imagine country region that there'd be more tendency for
Yes,
neighbours to give a helping hand or give credit or whatever.
If a farmer's been hurt and his crop has to come off, all the farmers say, okay, this is the day, everyone takes their machine and the crop comes off. There's a lot of community helping
We've sown a complete farmer's crop in a day. A guy got burnt. Badly
You
burnt.
don't get that in the city.
Everybody you just drive for miles with your machinery on the day. You're there before sun up. It's all planned the way you go. You put his crop in and go home, and it's done. And yeah, this is where communities do pull together. I mean, there's a story of years ago, before my time during the Depression, when a fellow was going to have his machinery repossessed, and he'd had a fairly hard time, and it wasn't just the Depression that was doing it to him. And there was extenuating circumstances evidently, and the local farmers felt anyway that he was due a bit more of a chance of what the repossession was going to give him. And this fellow came into Bunteen, and they reckon the farmers all just stood like that and said, no one's going to tell you where he is anyway. And, the body language was there, and the guy went home. So nobody did anything, there was nothing done wrong, but the message was given very, very clearly. Now, that's changed a bit because repossession companies still repossess. But yeah, so that guy was not a blood relation to any of those people. Might have even gone to the same church as those people, but he lived in the same town as those people. And that's the thing. You just don't know your neighbours in the city, The same.
Saying that, we've got a very nice neighbour.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Lady
We're
next
lucky.
door, she is. She's
We
really
are
lovely.
very lucky.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
But luckily there's few and far in between.
Yeah.
There
Very.
are people for 30 years or 40 or 50, they never said anything else to one other than good morning, hello, hello. And they have never been at a neighbor at a cup of tea, and the neighbor was never at their place at a cup of tea. That is the most common in the city, what you don't get ever in the country.
Oh, we've had.
I
we've
mean,
had
the comradeship,
yes.
In the country, and there's
it's,
always
you can't take
ready
it
to
away.
help. Yeah.
That is where you people are really close, and that is what.
Yes, it's born of necessity sometimes, Mrs. Franks, in that,
Yeah.
it's a long way to town. So we live 24 k's out now. There were farms further out than us. So you're on the phone or the two-way and you say, look, I'm going to Bowls. 3 of you would go on the one vehicle.
Yeah.
So you are thrown together anyway. Where in the city, there's hardly anything like that done. You want to go, you go. Next time nobody would have a clue. He's going a different direction anyway.
Yeah.
So you've got this.
No, the necessity. All right, I got another question, which is maybe off the beam. Your dad sort of went in, worked, maybe in a certain way became a member of the community. This, well, it's not the outback, but it's certainly rural Australia.
Yes.
And he's coming from the other side of the world
Yes.
with the Holocaust baggage,
Yes.
which is the mythical thing. I mean, if I take poetic license, I can say it's a kind of a meeting of myths. You're Australian,
Yes.
real Aussie country person versus this
Yes.
Holocaust
Deep
victim thing.
Deep European.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, what do you? I think I'm over dramatizing, but
No,
how do people relate to that?
it's times and places and where you are and what's happening in the world, because when your dad came out here, both my parents came from Great Britain. So they were, Mum had brothers in the war that fought in England, the Air Force and the Army. So they had a connection with what's happening there. The other thing is that Australia then, and there was a thing in the paper about it quite recently, this is how Australia used to be, and and this again is my view, but the people that arrive, whether it be your dad, whether they're Italians, whether they're Dutch, or whatever they were, they'd come out here and then we'd call them Jews, and we'd call them Woz, we'd call them newcomers, we'd call them everything. But you know, we could still sort of give them a pat on the back and say, oh, well, you're really going to be an Aussie anyway. But
they were more accepted,
they were
assimilated into the communities
easily
in the
assimilated
country.
because, well,
I mean, you'd call the Poms too, you know,
Sure.
you still call them whinging Poms, but it doesn't mean to say you don't like them.
No, every
And that's an
country is a
Australian
lot
thing.
of more than the city, all this nickname, like everybody's
yes, but
Australian, not Australian.
it's almost a term of endearment.
Yeah.
It really is. And but your dad came out in a time when that was so acceptable. I mean, we just had to be. I mean, there were so many of them coming anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and we were happy to see people. So it wouldn't matter where he came from. We were the ties are with Europe fundamentally from Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and that has changed. It's changed in that, and when I say fundamentally, your fundamentals were the same in that your beliefs about rule and government and spiritual guidance and all that, they all came in the same on the same rung of the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
They might be different, but
Yeah.
that's where that fitted and that fitted and that fit. So we can understand that, okay, that's the spiritual belief of those people, but it fits in here and the government fits in here and something else fits in here. But I think what comes now are very mixed up, and the spiritual thing might be the absolute, that's it. Well, something else has precedence over the way Europe used to accept it, you know. And
Mhm.
that becomes harder. I think multiculturalism, we're changing this a lot now, multiculturalism to me is not what we want. We want our own culture, because when you get multiculturalism it gets very difficult. That gives that person the right to stick with it forever and a day. Having said that, if you go back to when our parents came out here, in Woburn and Bunteen, there would have been 4 or 5 families which were predominantly German, predominantly Irish, predominantly English, predominantly Scottish, you know, and they did what the Singaporeans supposedly do. They are Singaporeans 6 days a week and they are whatever their nationality is the other day. And I think that's how those guys used to be. So it made it easier to assimilate. And I think your dad brought out here his little bit, like what everybody else brought
Yeah.
out. We were ready to take that on.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
Jan said, they were easy to.
Whereas before, you know, you can say a lot of Italian people come out. So okay, all of a sudden there's all these different Italian foods that you tasted and that was good. So that came in and became part of Australia, really, you know, they were adopted right in. So each of the countries, without them sort of sticking by themselves and being, although they lived in enclaves in the city, they tended to
In
be.
the city, yeah.
But there were parts of it that started, and they all started blending together.
I've heard-
Whereas
I've heard-
now they're keeping all separate. We are this, you'll change. You know, not we're going to come in, you're going to come out.
Yeah, I've heard some stories like about Italian war, what would you call them, like prisoners of war or whatever that
Yep.
were sent to Australia.
Yep.
That eventually that really blended in very well and greatly.
Yes. Now POWs were sent out from Italy to work on Australian farms.
Yeah.
Some of the poor beggars couldn't speak a word of English, but you know when they arrived here, they found that you said spaghetti and it meant the same thing, for instance, you know. So they were a bit wow, there's something they can speak of, there's something
Actually,
they know.
there was a prisoner of war camp though, wasn't there, down at Dwellingup,
There was, yes.
where a lot of the people from other nationalities, when the war broke out, they were all sort of put there as prisoners of war.
Well,
So
that
Germans
was
were put in
internally
Fremantle
placed.
jail.
The internee, was it?
Fremantle jail also had German people of German descent. I don't
You
know, maybe
see,
Italian.
The biggest wheat grower that WA had was Levy. He was of German. He was,
From the Dallawalla.
yes, well, from Woburn. My cousin owns what was his homestead now.
Yeah.
And Carew, or Waddy Forest. He grew most of his wheat in Waddy Forest, but he did have Woburn as his homestead.
Yeah.
He was, and during the war, he he was to be interned on Rottnest, I think, was another place where they had them all because they couldn't have seemingly collaborators running free. Now, the funny story is that he...
And he's German.
That's right, he was German.
Because it almost sounds very almost Jewish name.
Levy does do.
Yes, yes, but he was, and I know, the reason I know, my uncle was a JP, Justice of the Peace, and this Levy, who was a very astute gentleman, and they said, well, you're going to be sent to Rottnest, and he said, well, what if I see a JP every day of the week? And they said, well, if you do that, okay, you can stay on your farm. And he would wave perhaps a mile away. You see my uncle going around behind his team of horses and they'd wave back and he was seeing the JP.
And was he a Hitler on Germany's Hitler side or was he not on Hitler's side?
Was he what?
On Hitler's side. Or
Was
not?
he?
No, he was on our side, but you see, because he was a German national,
Yeah.
he wasn't allowed to be. No, he was.
Some of them were on Hitler's side, and some of their children, grown-up sons or daughters, they went over to Germany to help Hitler win the war.
Oh, yeah, but
This
I
one,
mean,
worry.
it happened. I'm not saying.
this particular guy, he's one of these. There's something like the 7 gravestones or something in
yes,
Dalwhinnie. He's one of the-
five graves in Dalwhinnie.
5, and he set up His Majesty's
He
Theatre
did,
and
he
one
did.
of the big hotels.
He was that
quite
yes, he
quite
was.
an important character.
He was a builder.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yes. If you get the opportunity, while I talk about buildings, if you get the opportunity to see the little book called Shearing Sheds of Western Australia, my father was a stonemason,
Ah, yeah.
and there's a
Write down the name of the book, please, Mark. Get it
it's-
from the library.
I think it's by June Lacey, I think, Lacey, I think.
Batty Library might be another place you can get.
Yeah, the Batty Library help you.
Lacey or IE?
Lacey.
EY. And what's the name of the book? Wool Sheds?
Wool Sheds in WA. I'm pretty sure that's what... I've got the copy at home, Mark, because Dad built Mount Area wool shed in 1928, and it's made of stone. It's a huge shed. It's 16 shearers, 8 each side, and it's about
So a stone wool shed is something extraordinary, isn't it?
yes, it is.
Instead of corrugated, galvanised.
That's right.
They've actually had the symphony orchestra play in there.
Twice it's
And
played.
where's that?
It's north of Mullawa. It's about 100 and I'm guessing about 150 or 60 k's north of Mullawa, which is straight north east of Geraldton, but further up. It's into the pastoral country. Oh yeah, magnificent! It really is a beautiful shed. There's no doubt about it, because they were proper stonemasons. Yeah.
I don't know, I have another friend who hails from Perenchery, Mike Starkey. I don't know if you know.
Who's that?
Starkey.
Oh, Starkey. I don't know them. Now they've left. See, Starkey's Road, because I know.
No, he still has the farm still. They
The
might
farm's still there. Yes.
Yeah.
No, but he still has the farm.
He might not. He's been living down and dwelling up for years and years.
For years and years and years. Yes.
Yes,
Starkey.
but it's still their farm.
Yes.
But I can't remember the name. He's very interested in him and his partner in some guy that built a lot of chapels around
Oh, the churches.
Monsignor
churches.
Hawes.
Yeah, they're Monsignor Hawes
probably. Yeah.
churches in yes.
So that's an interest of theirs.
Yes, he got the churches built in Perenchery, Morawar, Geraldton. He was a Roman Catholic
Yeah.
priest.
And there's also one over at
Q?
Yalgoo.
Yalgoo. Yeah, Monsignor Hawes. He
That
built
would be it, yeah.
4 or 5, yeah. But
Ended
yes.
up in the Caribbean or something.
yes, yeah. Anyway, a lot of people go to look at that architecture because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very good. Yeah, he certainly did a great job. But, oh, okay. So Starkey's. Yeah, well, Starkey's. I know where Starkey's Road is. And when we were naming all the roads, they had names in Perenchery, but we had to make it official at one stage through the council. And so we wrote down to the nomenclature committee and said, these are the names of the road, you know, this was Frank's Road and this is Mark's Road, blah, blah, blah. And had to get their approval for them all. And they wrote back and they said, they weren't so sure they liked the Starkey's Road. Well, they sounded like someone was Starkers, I guess, but anyway, we said, well, Starkey's had a farm there, and it was Starkey's Road, so they got past. Yeah, it was west of Perenjori.
You know, I went to school with someone in high school. His name was Tony Lay. Leahah. Maybe a Y at the end, I don't think
Yes,
so.
Lay,
Oh,
yes.
isn't it
Lay.
Leigh?
No, Leahy. Yeah, where from?
I don't know, somewhere, I know that's Dad's region, I can't
Yes, from
Pathara.
Pathara. Pathara and Bellague. Pathara, Billy Lay.
He was a bright boy. Yeah.
Chris Lay?
The guy is my age, so his name was Tony.
Tony.
I don't know if he's on the farm. The
Yeah,
guy was
no.
very bright, he could have gone into anything he wanted to. He was
Yeah,
very
I know
bright.
Chris. I don't know whether he's got a brother or not. Yeah, the Lays would, yes, the
Yeah,
Lays
Chris
were
Where
Harrow.
there.
did you go to school?
Matt Lawley. Matt Lawley farm.
To Morley School, did you?
Matt Lawley.
Matt
One,
Lawley,
just over
okay.
next to the Edith Cowan.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
All right, how have we done?
Terrific. Okay, sure.
Okay. You know that before we had decimal currency, we had the pounds, shillings and pence. And the shilling had the king's head on one side and a ram's head on the other. Just the ram's head with the horns. Now I'm 5'6", and Sam Wendy comes and buys a few oddments, and my father lets us get a shilling each, and on the back of this shilling is a ram's head. Until I was 8 or 9 or 10, I always thought Sam Wendy minted his own money because he was a wool buyer and we had a ram's head on his coins. Yeah, I did. I thought they were his. It's Mr. Wendy's money because it's got a ram's head on it.
And did you tell the story that Mr. Franks told you about South America going
I
after his uncle?
started to, when he went to South America to see this uncle, and we'd done the deal, and Ken said, I said, why Australia? And he told me, he said, look, he said, in South America, he said, there were just a few too many of a certain faction that went and hid there, you see. He said, so I really didn't want to go to South America, but I had an uncle who desperately wanted me to come. I ended up in Australia, but he said, he went back to see this uncle. I don't know if you went with him or not, but he did. And he said, Malcolm, he took me to a soccer match. You've heard the story, have you?
I think.
And he said, they're in this stadium, and we're waiting for this soccer match to begin. And he said, we're sitting there, he said, I don't know, was 60, 70, 80,000 people. And he said, I looked up, and around the perimeter, he said, all he could see were armed soldiers patrolling the top of the stadium. And he said, and I knew then I'd made the right decision. Australia was a better place to be. Yeah, he said, I looked, I thought, my goodness, you know. And coming from his background of, you know, of the gun was ruling, wasn't it? You know?
Yeah,
Sure, it would have been
And
scary.
yes, and I guess it took him back to, I've been in happier places than this. Yeah, so when did he go back to?
Oh,
It was 77.
30 years ago,
I think it was 77.
77.
Right.
Marilyn was doing matriculation then, or junior.
There was no junior already.
Pardon?
There was no junior. I didn't do my junior.
Yes,
There was no junior.
but he certainly.
It
There
was
was no junior.
I was already phased out. There was only matriculation and
Ah.
leaving. And Marilyn may not have even done leaving.
I didn't know.
No.
I thought that there is junior too at that time.
Your
So
children.
anyhow, you have was around 77.
I think so.
It happened what?
So there was only UWA. You went to UWA.
No, there was when I. This will be the view out of my hotel room. This here It's the wooden pump from the back. Over there are the wheat bins. Not the wheat bins. The wheat bins for the trains to come and take the stuff away, which nowadays don't operate, only in season. The line doesn't operate. It stops the next train station down, called McLeavy. And this is Arthur Street, which once was the main street of the town, outside of the Great Northern Highway. This pump was something I remember from my childhood. What remains of it? At the back of what was some sort of general store. Now we're just going down towards the bins, the pub, and the Great Northern. I would say that this was the hub of the town once. Again, looking up back onto Arthur Street, the same corner, the back of the pub. Along the length of Arthur Street, and we're already looking onto wheat fields. Wheat fields, and part of the Syme. This is where there's an awful lot of Syme trains that come through now. And this is the back, like the back of the roadhouse, or some other type of film. Action around here. I never visited as a kid. These are the guys that fell from the town, from the Shire. And this is pretty much what's left of the Woburn football field. See if we can find the goalpost at the other end. There's one of the buggers. There's a second. 6 points. And there's the half forward flank. Now around there, that might be a creche or something. Through there, there's a clubhouse for tennis and golf. That seems to still be alive. This, I would guess, across from deep in the forward pocket to is what remains of what I would guess, playing amateur archaeologist, is what remains of the scoreboard. Sports club, and here we are at the artificial turf tennis club, or the golf course. You can see it's not tremendously green, pretty sandy golf course, but who am I to complain? And over here, if we get some close up of it, adjoining wheat fields. The wheat's very slow down this year. They planted very late because it's been very little rain. Back onto the farm. I would hazard to guess that is the roof of the pub. Now this might give you a bit of perspective. Dave. We are filming from the sports club area. Over there is the backside of the wheat bins. All the bush in between, and we circle around again to the sports club. Now, what we're doing here is we're walking along the side of some sort of wheat bin which they use. Look at it from the inside in a few minutes. Yeah, looking around from the inside, terrific stuff. So exciting. Back to you can stand here on the line without much danger of getting run over. Is dead. This is going down south. This here is the Woodland Station. It was. That's the information center. And here's the center. Closed. Gateway to the north is what it says there. It's beautiful farm machinery. Probably stuff they used to drag. This would probably be a silo. This is a picture of where we are. In a area of stuff we really need to know. Of course, we're in the middle of nowhere, but we're politically correct to say the least. Down the avenue, the Great Northern Highway. This is the infamous or famous pub from the north side. That's what I'm saying. So we're in the Woburn Motel, and we're sitting with Jim. What's
Ellison,
Jim Ellison.
E-L-I-S-O-N.
Okay, and you're a farmer from?
Woburn,
Yeah.
W-U-B-I-N.
And where's your farm?
4 miles or 6 kilometres west of Woburn.
Okay, and as we were just nattering a bit before, you said you didn't sell privately.
That's right.
Okay.
We sell their wool through the brokers.
Yeah.
But
That was the actually the most accepted way of
not really. Where the private wool buyers came in, people sold wool on the lap.
what I haven't heard that
Well,
expression.
the wool on the lap is
Off the
you
chips
sell a
back
part or say a percentage of your wool clip. Probably you can get cash for it
Yeah,
and shove it in your pocket,
yeah.
and you don't account for that, and you get cash for it, so it doesn't go in
Uh-huh.
to income tax returns.
Yeah.
So that was how
The
a private wool buyers operate on that. They gave less, but
Yeah.
paid cash.
Uh-huh. They give less than the floor. You get less than going on the floor.
Oh, yeah, otherwise they wouldn't get it. I mean, they usually worked it out to
Mhm.
a point that you got nearly as much as what you get on the floor, except you got cash in hand, and then you could do what you like with the money.
Well, it's interesting because I'm glad I talked to you because I'm getting another angle.
Mm.
Because I thought they were just buying for, they bought for companies. Well, no, in the old
Oh.
days they would buy privately.
Oh.
Oddments they would buy privately for
Yeah, you're
themselves
right,
and then
yeah.
sell to the companies.
I'm pretty sure when later on they actually bought clips like
Yeah, they
your father or his opposition, like Peter Reisman, they bought clips, whole clips, and gave more, but they had to account for it. The seller had to account for his income tax returns.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were still private to the stock firms. Like, basically we had 3 stock firms
Yeah.
in WA.
The big stock
And-
firms.
mm.
They were controlling the floor.
Well, they basically, well, I suppose it wasn't for them, but we'd have private wool buyers around,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
you couldn't sort of gauge the wool market. And of course the auction, everybody accepted the auction prices, whatever you got at an auction, that was, you know, what you traded as. And, you know, you subtracted, you know, your freight and charges and cash in hand, I suppose.
Well, I'm not sure if, like, once they were buying clips,
Mm.
they were working on commission, so as far as, I don't think that was cash, that was checked and contract and everything. Maybe
Yeah.
oddments was,
Mm.
and here I'm not really full bottle on this.
Well, I'm not either, because as I say, they knew I didn't sell privately because I was only a small farmer and I just sold my wool to a stockbroker, and my accountants accepted that as being my wool clip for the year,
Yeah.
and there was no hassles about it.
Was there one of the advantages supposedly of the private buyers was they dealt with all the transportation, or most of the transportation.
Oh, exactly.
What did, seeing you went through all that transportation stuff,
Mm.
what did that entail?
Well, basically totally different now, because when all that was happening, we had a railway station operating
Yeah.
in Woburn,
Yeah.
and they had a goods shed, and when you had, well, private wool buyers bought oddments, they just deliver it to the railway station during normal hours, consign it away, it'd go into the goods shed, and it'd stay there until there was enough to send down in a truckload or something like that to make it consignment. And now, well, I don't know, oh, there are some kind of wool buyers, I think, but I don't think by the same people that used to do it, say, 20 years ago. Like, but they don't operate now. There's other ones, I think, go out buying it, but who they are, I don't know.
Did the big firms like that, I don't know, Dalgarians,
Yeah.
West Farmers and those, did they have people, them and the banks have people sort of up over a barrel because they owe them money for machinery and stuff like that?
Yes, sometimes I think they did. If you bought livestock on the basis, when you couldn't pay for the livestock, say sheep, with the idea of growing wool and selling sheep off, and if you had the stock firm's money, well, I don't know whether they could stop you, but they preferred you to sell the wool and livestock through the company you bought the sheep from. That's if you hadn't paid cash for them. But a lot of people got started that way by going to stock firms. But I'm not talking, 10 years ago, I'm talking 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah. Is that actually what, I've never thought of that, is that would, if you were buying sheep stock, you would actually buy it from one of the stock firms, or could you go privately? I
But if
never
you
thought
had
of that
cash,
before.
well, generally people always, if somebody wanted to sell sheep, they'd go to the stock firm and say, oh, I've got so many wethers or so many old sheep I want to sell, or young sheep. They'd say, oh, well, we'll send them down to the Midland markets where the weekly auctions are over 2 or 3 days, and or you could sell to somebody locally or whoever might have inquired for sheep to buy. You still, people still wanting to buy sheep.
Yeah.
Advertising, and there's still people wanting to sell sheep through advertisement. So,
Is the light bothering you?
no, not at all.
Okay. When did you buy your farm? Was it your farm that was already there, or?
Now our farm's very old,
Mm-hmm.
and initially it was a Crown Purchase block, all scrub.
What, like in the
Everything was 1900 and, well, land around here was surveyed in 1907, and apparently the next year it was thrown open for selection. And as far as we're aware, you couldn't get more than 1,200 acres. That was the law of the land. But you do hear stories exaggerating by thousands and thousands of acres.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't believe.
You know, I spoke to, I don't know, Elton Butcher from Pithara.
Yeah, I know.
He showed me the original
Yeah.
sort of map.
Mm.
Yeah, there were blocks like that, like what you were saying.
Well, no blocks were surveyed at 1,200 acres, but most of them are around about 1,000 acres.
yeah, makes sense.
You
With what?
know, 400 hectares or 1,000 acres. Some a lot less. If they were sort of 550s, you could buy 2 blocks like that, or
Uh-huh.
something like that, and get up to about 1,200 acres. But I was always of the opinion that the lands department had inspectors going around to see how much work you're doing on these blocks, and if you didn't do any work, they took them off you.
Uh-huh.
And well, somebody wanted, or they were reallocated, I suppose, to anybody who might wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
But whether that happened very much, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But some people had more pull than others. So there's one farmer around here, well, he wasn't a farmer, he had 18,000 acres.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
But that's a
Initially, he controlled it from the corner of William and St George's Terrace, Perth, which is the Palace Hotel. And if the people are allowed to open their eyes, when the railway came north of Wongan Hills, where it actually originally stopped,
Yeah.
it runs alongside his property.
That's not who's the guy? One of the five guys that are buried in
Oh, that's Levy,
Levy.
Mm.
That's not him.
No, it's not him, no. It wasn't for this fellow I'm talking about, Glare. Glare is the fellow that's got the street right at the pub corner here.
Uh-huh.
If you go out there, you'll see a street name takes you up to the women's school. That's the
Yeah,
fellow I'm
yeah.
referring to.
Okay.
And at one time, he was the mayor of Boulder.
Uh-huh.
You've heard of Boulder?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Was all was the land, say, where in Pithara and Dalwallinu opened up at the same time as here?
No, no.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Sort of
The
sounds
first land
around about
around
the
it.
same time.
Well, I don't take any notice of Elton Butcher.
That's okay.
I know he's written a book and I'll never write a book.
Uh-huh.
But it's an interesting book he's written.
I haven't read it yet, but I spoke to him actually. I sort of
Mm.
met with him like
He's got a big book, it's only $22.
we gave it to me.
Yeah.
Oh, he gave me some book. I don't know, maybe it's
Oh,
not the book.
But you got the Weaving book, or you not, haven't got it? There's only about one left,
I haven't heard about it yet.
haven't you?
No.
I don't think it's in at the railway station or the Weaving post office, but I think there's one or two at the Delhi Shire Council.
Okay.
But that's it. There's,
Oh.
did about 200 of them.
To
They'll do another lot.
with the history of the region.
Oh, a bit of the history.
Okay.
I was based on the people that come into the district.
Anyway, so
But
your
often-
father opened up
Mm.
your farm,
Exactly.
and it's like is the land up here very variable? Because like
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, so you can hit a good patch and a bad patch. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The land around here is known as the Nugadong agricultural areas.
And what is that?
Oh, that was the first land, as far as I was concerned,
Mm-hmm.
was surveyed for settlement.
Uh-huh.
And they just went here, there and everywhere to try and survey the better land out in blocks.
Uh-huh.
And then later on, the land in between was probably, it was almost surveyed, but surveyed and then given a title number or a block number. But then they were called Victoria location numbers.
Uh-huh. So I haven't heard of that.
You've heard of Victoria though, haven't you?
Victoria, the state, yeah. And the Queen.
Yeah, and you've heard of Melbourne too, haven't you?
Yeah,
Well, that's the block numbers in Dalwallinu.
yeah. Well, what's the connection?
Well, why didn't they carry on with Nugadong agricultural location numbers? When they did that, that was it. There was no more Nugadong agricultural location numbers. So they went so far with the money. I don't know whether you know Western Australia was broke, we never had any money.
Okay.
See,
Not like today.
no, just the opposite. Just after World War II, when the Cold War was about to start, was it?
Yeah, okay.
Well, it was the communists taking over the world.
So they said, yeah.
Well, I don't know which came sooner, but I remember in about late 1945 or 46, they used to have school broadcasts coming from the ABC, used to be at 10 o'clock or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and no one had any, like the schools never had radios, but usually the school teacher had a radio, so you'd trip across to the school and listen to these school broadcasts. But I'd left school by that time, you know, a few years before that time. Well, I heard this story written by it was read by David Moore for he was an ABC newsreader, that's the Australian Broadcasting Commission, you know,
Yeah.
and I used to see the ink pen and peel estate. Have you heard of the ink pen and peel estate?
No.
Haven't you?
No.
Well, I found out how they came about, the ink pen and peel estate, because what he was trying to do through this broadcast to the schools is trying to compare the West Australian way of government to that of the Soviet Union.
Well, they're different.
Yeah, but you can't compare them because, in theory, how the ink pen and peel estate came about by, the government couldn't afford to pay surveyors. So they gave them the offer of land for work that they carried out for the government. And they were allowed to go wherever they liked to take a portion of land. I don't know how many acres, say, the peel estate comprises, and I don't know how many acres the ink pen estate comprises, but that's what they got for services, for surveying, because they wanted the land surveyed, but they didn't have the money to pay surveyors. So it was another way of getting around,
Yeah.
you know.
And then they used what, the Victorian?
No,
System.
ink pen is a place sort of around Kwinana.
Oh yeah.
You know, you've heard of Kwinana
Of course,
Refinery,
Yeah.
and you've heard of Wundowie Charcoal and Iron.
That I haven't. One day I was
Well, I
more
used-
familiar.
There's a big area around Wundowie, I think, and that's a big proportion of that would have been known as the ink pen estate. I don't know why he took land up there, but apparently, probably in the 50s, they were producing this iron ore. I don't know, you had to use charcoal to make it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they called it pig iron, but I don't really know.
Could be.
And I'm pretty sure the Chamberlain Industries tractor works and that used this iron from Wundowie, or the pig iron.
Mm-hmm.
But they cleared the trees to make this iron, you know. They made charcoal from the trees they cleared apparently, and then later on they surveyed the blocks up and people had to apply for blocks of land and go hobby farming. And 2 people in this district went down there and went broke, of course, because they were too small apparently. I don't know, I never went into knowing what they did.
Okay.
Uh,
So I mean, you must have grown up then in the Depression years and all that.
absolutely. Mm,
Tough time.
absolutely.
Nothing like even.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then did you have
Oh.
brothers and sisters?
Yeah, plenty of them.
Yeah.
Mm.
And did you feel that you were suffering in those
Oh,
times?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Gone hungry or?
Oh no, I remember around about, I left school when I was 12, a bit over 12,
Mm-hmm.
in about 1940. And I remember a chap was employed as a married couple farm worker, and about 1 year into the World War II, he cut his kids' throats.
My God.
And that's how Adolf Hitler, the biggest maniac that ever lived on this planet, was affecting the world
Yeah.
as far away as 10 or 12,000 miles away. Yet he could make some man think there was no point in living with a maniac like that on coming into the world or trying to run the world.
I know. Because it's
And
so
I mean,
far
you-
away.
You don't have to be told what happened. I mean, we knew something was going on, but we didn't know what it was until after the war was over. You know, we used to hear bits of stories, but no one could believe it.
I mean, this guy was here. He was Australian. This guy.
Oh yeah, like everybody worked for nothing. You know, after 12 months, you know, you're no better off after 12 months, and you can see the next 12 months you wouldn't be any better off either.
Yeah.
But just after the war, I'm not sure what year, about 48 or 49, when people started getting a pound for their wool, Well, it took about 3 bales to buy a brand new motor car. If you could buy a brand new American motor car.
Yeah, yeah.
Today, that one I got out there cost me 80 bales of wool, and I had to pay for everything to produce the 80 bales of wool. That's the difference.
Yeah, there was the prices went up. There was the dividends and all that sort of stuff after the war. I heard about. Yeah.
There's a farm out here, a showplace of Western Australia. He sold it walk in, walk out, about 47. The first wool clip exceeded the price of the farm. And that's got a house on it. Well, you couldn't buy it today for $500,000, probably $1 million, and you can't even live in it. But it'll never fall down.
Why can't you live in it?
Because it's been abandoned and people have gone in and ransacked
I
it.
get
You know,
you.
there's
Yeah, I get you.
pilfered, you know, by different people wanting this and wanting that. It's just unreal.
But you said, like, the house itself would be worth that much, are you saying?
Well, I reckon it, to me, I wanted to buy it as a heritage thing.
Yeah.
My money's no good because elders, not necessarily, the person who was selling the farm, not necessarily for elders. Elders were owed the money, but another firm is selling it because you don't have to, these days, because elders owed the money, they didn't have to sell the farm.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to,
Yeah.
and then the people wouldn't allow elders or West Farmers, I think at that time it might have been, it's AWB now, but, or Landmark I think they call it. He got to allow somebody else in, and of course
Because
my money wasn't good enough, I suppose, or it was all sort of pre-arranged anyway, what was happening.
well, they wanted more.
No, they got $100,000 less.
Oh my God.
Mm.
So,
And I wanted it for heritage. But my thing, if you send the house $200,000, you still have to go and fix it up a bit.
oh yeah, what you said was.
But it's there for thousands of years. It's just unreal. Everything.
It's interesting, like, actually driving up,
It,
you know, here and there, and I wouldn't, and there's some farms which have these, from a distance, you know, like old Federation style houses or something like that. Well, how do people, like, with all the distance from Perth and all that, how do people manage that?
well, they didn't. They just relied on the railways to deliver the goods
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a week, 3 times a week. But initially, around here, there was no railway line. They had to wait for it to come. About 1915, I think it was connected up.
If people are so poor, how do they build these great old
Well,
Federation style houses?
these people weren't really poor.
Okay.
But then everybody worked cheap. Everybody looking for work. You get
Uh-huh.
first class tradesmen for virtually nothing.
Uh-huh, that's interesting.
People left, you know, Melbourne and that looking for work. Go anywhere to, you know, to get something. And if you had a bit of money, you could buy something.
Yeah.
You know, some of the deals are just unbelievable what people bought, you know, properties for. So darn cheap.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure a lady in, I don't know what they call it, North Fremantle, I thought she said she paid 40, I don't know, it was $40, £40 for her house.
Oh, that's incredible.
It is, but that's how it was like.
So up here as well.
Oh, yeah.
So this thing's gonna
See, a lot of people just walked off their farms and left them to the banks.
Mm-hmm. So that would have been because of drought, or?
No, they just owed the banks that much money and they couldn't see their way out. And they just felt they were working for the banks.
Mm.
So they just let them take the funds and that was it. As in the case of this chap didn't have to, he wasn't broke or anything, it was just the other way around. He was worn out in the knees, had no sons. And they thought there was going to be another depression after World War II. That didn't happen. It just went the other way.
You mean the guy that got depressed and
Oh,
his
not
kids, or
necessarily.
the farmer?
No, he just thought he'd let somebody else have it and you know, everything was going to be no good. If he had known his war was going to be worse than that, he would have been still there.
They were stockpiling it, in fact.
Oh, well, he wasn't short of money in some sense as to what other people, how poor people were.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm just waiting for this thing's just about finished.
mhm.
Huh? Let's do it this way, because it's almost finished anyway.